Hey everyone, it's Nightharo here, and today I'm going to give you the one setup you need as a healer to get you through all the content in the game, and we'll get you started in trials. So you could wear this literally everywhere. As long as the other healer is not wearing the exact same setup, you're going to be just fine. Now, as it has already been pointed out to me in many places, if you are in a trial, and I run a trials guild, so I'm quite aware of this. If you are in a trial, you're actually going to have typically 2 tanks and 2 healers, and there is no reason, unlike DPS, there is no reason why you want those 2 healers or your 2 tanks wearing the exact same sets. So we are going to have to do something different there. But we're going to start off with just the one setup that'll get you through everything in the game. So that setup is going to be Spell Power Cure and then Pillager's Profit. We're going to put Spell Power Cure, we're going to front bar that set with a Resto Staff, and then our back bar with a Destro Staff, we're going to run Pillager's Profit, and then we're going to pair that with a monster set, typically Symphony of Blades for our shoulder and head, and we have a front bar, back bar set up there. We have room for a Mythic, and that means we're going to put on Pearls of El-No-Fey, which will help us with ultimate generation. Spell Power Cure, for those who don't know, gives you major courage for you and your group just by overhealing everybody in the group. Most healing in ESO is overhealing, so that's going to be procced pretty much 100% of the time. The one thing you do need to keep in mind is that Spell Power Cure only lasts for a couple of seconds, and we are front barring that set, so we need to make sure that every 3 casts we are on our front bar to make sure that Spell Power Cure is up 100% of the time. Now, in certain situations, you can wait a little bit longer, but in general, every 3 casts, you want to make sure you're on front bar, and that'll make sure you have that up 100% of the time. If there's ever a situation where you're struggling to stay on your front bar or switch to your front bar, I would strongly encourage you to instead just run that 5 pieces on your body and drop either your monster set or your mythic. But with this ideal setup, we're going to front bar Spell Power Cure with that for that major courage, and then on the back bar running Pillager's Profit. We're going to use, and we want to use our ultimate on our back bar in this situation. Using your ultimate when you have Pillager's Profit, it will provide ultimate to the rest of your group. So it's a ton of ulti generation for your entire group. Now, this is overkill in dungeons. You really could run something a little bit better, but this also works incredibly well in trials, and it's still really good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that potentially if you want to min-max for a dungeon situation, you could run something else, and we'll talk about that more in a second. So that's what you put on your back bar. We've already talked about our monster set, and then we're going to run Pearls of El-No-Fey. Whenever our Magicka is below 50%, we're going to be generating a ton of ultimate, up to 3 ultimate per second just from Pearls of El-No-Fey. So again, the idea here is that we're an ulti battery, okay? We're constantly want to keep our Magicka below 50%, changing out our food or whatever we have to make sure that happens. And then we want to constantly be healing, and then we'll generate a ton of ultimate, and then we can give it to our group via the Pillager's Profit. And that's the setup. That's the one setup you could run this, even in dungeons and trials. This is going to work really well. You know, if you want to be optimal, you do want to let the group know that you are wearing Pillager's Profit. They should go into a boss fight, drop their ultimate. Hopefully you've saved ultimate at this point. You can save up to 400 ultimate, and then you'll go ahead and use yours. A lot of times in organized trial content, you'll just barrier because you already have enough Warhorns and other ultimates going on, but there's no reason why you couldn't just run a Warhorn with it, especially if you're in a dungeon situation. And that's going to provide a huge burst window for your group, as they're going to be able to quickly get back their ultimate and be able to drop another ultimate on the boss, depending on the fight stage and what have you. And if that's all you want to know, and you want to know about traits and everything, skip to that section of the video and we'll talk about that, because it's the same for all setups, so we'll just do it once at the end. Now, for those who would like to potentially optimize a little bit more for dungeons, you have a couple of options here. So the first thing you might want to do is drop Pillager's Profit on your back bar. And the reason for that is, while the ulti is nice, there are other things you could do for bigger burst damage phase. So what I would recommend running instead on your back bar is going to be Master Architect. And you still kind of do this the same way. Run your Warhorn on your back bar, drop your ultimate, and with Master Architect, it's going to provide an extra 10% damage increase for your entire party. And this is through the Major Slayer buff. Now, you can also change something else up, since you're not really being an ulti battery and giving a bunch of ultimate to the rest of your group. While Pearls of El-No-Fey is still totally fine to run, because you are using an ultimate and have a set that's going to give a damage boost to the group, the more ultimate you can consume. I'm sorry, the more ultimate you can generate, rather. I don't know why I said consume. So instead, what you could do, especially if you're in a situation in a dungeon where your group does not need you to be wearing Symphony of Blades for the extra recovery for your group, instead what you could do is drop that and run Spalder of Ruin. So that is another mythic, so you can't run Pearls of El-No-Fey with that. But what that's going to do is give your group extra weapon and spell damage. So just to increase damage, it does reduce your recovery, so it is a little bit harder for you to run. It is going to reduce your recoveries for the rest of your group because now you're not running Symphony of Blades, but this can actually work quite well. This setup, though, that I'm recommending to you is a dungeon setup. Typically in an optimized trial setting, while you can still reuse Master Architect in certain situations, this is typically not what you would be running in a trial. The first setup is what you would be running in most trials. Now, if you drop your monster set and you've moved your mythic, now you have an extra space on your bar. So instead, what you can do is you can full body 5-piece Spell Power Cure or your jewelry, it really doesn't matter where, and then you back bar one of your sets, either Master Architect or Pillager's Prophet, and it still leaves you with an opportunity to put a different resto staff on your front bar, and you can use Grand Rejuvenation. Grand Rejuvenation will give you a bunch of recovery whenever you're casting your healing springs. Now, it's not nearly as much as you would get in a trial where there's a lot more people, but it can help offset the fact that you're wearing Spalder of Ruin, especially in a dungeon where you might not have the best recovery to begin with. That'll vary depending on class and race and setup, how good or bad your recovery is, but that is another option. And I just want to make you aware of it so you can do the best choice for you. Now let's talk about where you get all these sets from. So first up, Spell Power Cure is going to drop from White Gold Tower, which is an old, it's actually technically a DLC. I think it's like the first DLC. So very easy to get, shouldn't be too big of a deal for you. Pillager's Prophet drops from Dreadsail Reef. You do not need the perfected version of Pillager's Prophet, so you can just run that on normal, get the pieces you need. Master Architect, if you decide to go that route, it drops from Halls of Fabrication. Same deal, you can run that trial on normal. It's a little bit hard to get a group for that, Halls of Fabrication, but that can be a tricky set to get, but you can get it there. Pearls of El Nofe is again a mythic, so, and same with Spalder of Ruin, so the leads are going to be in various locations. I would recommend just looking up a guide. Symphony of Blade drops some Depths of Malatar. You get the head from defeating the last boss on Veteran. That can still be a little tricky. Now that DPS is higher, it can be a little bit easier. You can DPS your way through it, but it can be a tricky dungeon, so keep that in mind. But you're going to get the shoulder from the Undaunted vendor via Undaunted keys. And then, of course, the Master's Resto Staff drops some Dragonstar Arena, and it's known as Grand Rejuvenation. Now, if you're in a trial, you don't want to, both healers can't run the setup, so what's your other healer going to do? Or what's another setup you could have where you could run that during a trial? So what that's going to be is what we call Rojo, which is Roaring Opportunist and Jorvold's Guidance. Roaring Opportunist provides the same buff for the group that Master Architect provides, except for it's not just when we use our ultimate, it's whenever we heavy attack. And that drops from Kind's Aegis, which is a trial. And again, you don't need the perfected version of this. You can just run it on normal, get the set you need, and then you're good to go. Jorvold's Guidance drops from Scalecaller Peak. This is a newer DLC dungeon. Again, you don't need to run on Veteran. You can run it on normal, so it shouldn't be too hard to get. And then typically you pair that with Spalder of Ruin. So that's why we don't normally run that on our other healer, because we're going to be running it on this healer. So the idea here is that Roaring Opportunist procs when you heavy attack, and then Jorvold's Guidance increases the duration of that. Now, you still can't get 100% uptime, but you can get a lot closer to 100% uptime with Jorvold's Guidance. A lot of times I see the Jorvold's Guidance set being recommended and ran on a healer without Roaring Opportunist. That's basically never a good idea. Please don't run Jorvold's Guidance by itself. So Roaring Opportunist, Jorvold's Guidance, and then we're going to run Spalder of Ruin. Now, we can backbar one of these sets, and honestly, I would probably do Roaring Opportunist and just make sure you heavy attack on your back bar, because you want both Roaring Opportunist and Jorvold's Guidance active at the same time whenever you proc Roaring Opportunist, so you get that longer duration buff, that Major Slayer. And running it with Spalder of Ruin reduces our recoveries, but if we're heavy attacking, we're also getting back a bunch of Magicka. So you kind of see how it balances out and why it makes sense to have this person wear Spalder of Ruin while they're Rojoing. Also of note, there is an add-on called Roaring Opportunist that'll help you track this. Whenever you're in a trial setting, you will need to heavy attack twice to get this procced on the entire group. And so if you do have that add-on, or if you see me healing and I have it up, you'll see two different numbers there, and it's just for the two different procs sets, because you do need to proc it a couple of times. Another thing that people are often using right now as a monster set is Ozazon the Inferno as a monster set. And so this, what it does is it provides us with vitality, so that helps increase our healing and also increases shields, and it also gives a little over 4,000 armor. This is a good set. The thing is that it's way overused. Oftentimes you don't need that, and it procs when you overheal, or rather the amount of vitality will give you an increase in healing, and that can be helpful, but the extra armor is also a really big deal, and so that has to be proactively done. So again, it's a mixed bag, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and it's not that it's not good, it's just just that it's way overused and people think it's going to save the day. Most of the time, I would strongly recommend running Spalder of Ruin. Now, running those setups, again, you're going to have a situation where it's not ideal, right? Because you're reducing your recoveries, and depending on what kind of class you're on and what your setup is, you could be struggling a bit with sustain. So again, you could do the same thing where you back bar Roaring Opportunist, you keep Jorvold's Guidance on your body, you have your Spalder of Ruin with one piece of crit like Slime Crawl for your monster set, which is the same thing you do with the other setup. And then on your front bar, you can run Grand Rejuvenation to help that recovery. Again, especially in trials, to help you be able to, continue to spam heals and keep a lot out. Alternatively, the Black Rose Prison Resto Staff can also be great in certain situations. It's only single target, but it can really be helpful for certain heal checks in various trials, like in Sunspire on the Tombs and a few other places, but it is single target, so keep that in mind. And that's it. Oh, I'm sorry, let me tell you about where you get these sets. So we mentioned Kind's Aegis, Scalecaller Peak, and then our monster set, Ozazon the Infernal, you get from Scrivener's Hall. Scalecaller Peak is Jorvold's Guidance. Scrivener's Hall is the Ozazan of the Inferno. And that's it. That's it for your sets. Now, for your body, your traits on all of these things. So on your body, you want all Divines, head, shoulders, the whole body, everything in Divines, and then you want all maximum magic and enchants. On your jewelry, you have a couple of options, but generally speaking, you want 3 pieces of infused jewelry. That's kind of a set thing. And then what you want on those, you can do either reduce spell cost or increased spell damage. Spell damage will increase your healing, even though it's, spell damage. So spell power, whatever you want to call it. So that will increase your healing done. And then you just run 1 piece. And if you need, maybe run 2. Typically, you shouldn't be running all 3. You probably shouldn't need that in almost all situations. So you don't need that much recovery. Again, do something like put on the Grand Rejuvenation on your front bar to help with your recovery so that you can run spell power on your jewelry there. But reducing the spell cost is pretty huge, and a lot of people don't quite realize how good it is. And then for our weapons on our back bar, on our Destro staff, we want to always make sure we're running Wall of Elements, and then we have a couple of options, but typically I run an Infused staff and then a Berserker enchant to increase our healing. You could do a few other things. I've gone more in depth into that, whether you want to run a Crusher enchant or something else on your back bar, but I've done complete healer guides, so go look that if that's what you're interested in. And then on your front bar, again, dealer's choice a bit. It's whatever you want to run. Typically, I choose something like Powered for increased healing. That's a bit overkill. Typically, don't need it. If you want more ulti generation, something like Decisive, which will help you generate more ultimate whenever you're already generating ultimate, is probably the most meta and best thing to do as kind of a all-around best setup. Again, there's a lot of different options. As far as front bar enchantment, just don't do the same enchantment as you have on your back bar because it'll overwrite the other one. But whatever you want to run, you could run something that will drain and give you a bit of magic recovery. You could run a weakening enchant. It's really up to you, whatever works for you. If you're struggling with sustain, go with something that'll do a little bit of mag drain. But anyways, that's it for today. Hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, feel free to hit me up down in the comments down below, or come by the That Wasn't the Boss Discord channel. We have help channels, and there are a bunch of people, many of who know even more than I do about all of this stuff, and they can help you out and give you specific advice if you want to run a different setup, if you want to optimize for your particular dungeon group, or what have you. So there's a ton of people. Everybody's really nice. Nobody's toxic. It doesn't matter if you're brand new to the game. Doesn't matter if you're super sweaty. There's people who do score pushing, and there's people that literally just got the game and have no idea what's going on, and they're just like, help me. We love to help people. That's why we're there. That's why the Discord exists. So come on by. We'd love to see you. Anyways, that's it for today. Appreciate all of you guys watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.